ones?
Ooh, I think I had the former, the beepin one.
Oh, like the ones without the soup.
Oh, I had both.
Oh, right.
I guess I had both because I had the ones with all the different meats and stuff, and I had the ones with the soup as well.
Yeah. I
So
think,
good.
oh gosh, I'm craving one right now. It's perfect for summer as well because it's
Yeah,
quite cool and like just it just cools your stomach down.
yeah. Oh, it's so good. But I think we got recording
Yeah,
done. I
yeah,
saw
yeah.
that
We're
someone was
recording
here and
now.
someone's not.
Yeah, we're
Hey,
recording live. Hey.
hey.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for making this time to chat with me.
Of course. I was so excited because I love your music and I got to geek out to all my friends. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be talking to Silly because
I was
we all
I
listen to
saw
you and it's great.
I'm honored as well because I saw the tweet that you made about me and then I checked out your Twitter profile and then I went to your website and you're like a coder and like you make TikToks but like you make keyboards and like you make all sorts of stuff and it's just so cool and
Yeah.
it's like in areas that I'm not like I'm it's a mystery so so it's awesome to see people like you really passionate about areas that I'm not really familiar with. I think it's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's always fun to talk to someone who is doing really cool things that you know nothing about. Like music
Yeah,
stuff, I can play music, but writing music and producing it and stuff fascinates me. I don't know where I would even start.
I feel the same way about coding. Like it's something that I think is really cool. Um and I know we cannot live without, but I don't think I would ever be able to like speak the language. It is a language in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and there's different languages too, and depending on what you're coding for, you code different things for websites, for phones, for desktop computers, for laptops, for all kinds of different things have different languages that you write in.
Oh, okay. So it's like a dialect of coding language.
Yeah, kind of. They're
Like
just straight up different languages.
is it
Like
like JavaScript and like HTML? If I am I like knowing
nice,
am I going the right
yeah.
direction?
Yeah, those are web languages. So if you want to make a
Okay.
website, you definitely need to know JavaScript, HTML, CSS. But if you want to, for example, make a phone app, you need to know something like Swift or Java or Kotlin. There's so many different languages out there, and new ones come up all the time too that you end up having to learn.
Do you speak how many languages, like coding languages can you speak,
Or
would you
yeah,
say?
speak right. I can pick them up relatively quickly. When you know one language pretty dang well, you can pick up other ones fairly well. But
Oh, okay.
I've had jobs doing a variety of different languages. JavaScript is the one that I specialize in, but I've
Okay.
done Python, I've done Java, I've done C and C++, I've done C sharp, I've done Go, I've done Ruby. Like I've
Whoa.
touched a lot of different languages, and that's not even scratching the surface of all the different languages out there.
Have you actually ever like learned to speak a language like Chinese or like Mandarin or
Yeah,
like
yeah. So I speak
Japanese?
Spanish, and
Oh,
I'm
cool.
trying to learn words in Korean. I mentioned to you earlier, my husband's Korean, and I the grammar is so hard.
It's
I can
reversed, isn't it? From
yeah,
Korean from
it's
English.
reversed and rearranged a little bit, and I've had the hardest time. But I know words like moo and a blanket
Nice.
is boo. I know like very basic words.
Copy.
Yeah.
Coffee is coffee in Korean.
Yeah, it's the alphabet is nice and easy to read once you like get the shapes and stuff down. So I can read it and kind of pronounce things, but putting together a sentence, I'm not there yet.
Yeah, I once tried to learn Mandarin and I think
Tough.
I mean I've learned it I've studied it for like a good year and I should know this, but I'm pretty sure it's like reversed from Korean. I should know this considering I've learned it for a year, but I just forgot all about it after kind of I kind of got out of the habit of learning it. It's like it's one of those things that just requires you to do it like on a day-to-day basis. You just have to keep going at it, but I just kind
Mhm.
of fell out of the habit of learning it. But I just wanted to ask, if you have experience in learning a new language, is it like does it have any resemblance to learning a new like coding language?
Kind of. There's actually some really interesting branches of how coding and linguistics collide and rearrange and stuff. Actually, at the university where I studied, a lot of linguistics majors ended up taking computer science classes because there was some interesting overlaps. It's definitely not exactly the same, but it's similar. It's understanding the syntax of logic, and that's kind of how languages are too.
Do coding languages all use alphabets though, like English alphabets?
Typically, yes. There are a few out there. Like there was actually big news last year, maybe even earlier this year, time isn't real, of a Chinese programming language, and it was like the first ever Chinese programming language.
Oh
But
wow.
almost always it's Roman characters, English letters and stuff.
But like to normal human eye, it would just be like random like sets of alphabets that don't really make up any like
Uh, You'd be surprised, actually. Like, if you want, I can share my screen and I can show you some code that I have on my screen right
could
now, and
you?
you'd be, yeah, 1 second. I will show you what that looks like. 1 second. I'll share this screen here. I'm pressing the button and showing you
I don't
here.
even know how to share my
Okay.
whoa.
So
Oh
you can probably see that it's not using any particularly crazy words or
all right, so like
ones
each
and
word
zeros and
makes
stuff.
sense. Like
Right.
it makes like I don't
Yeah.
know what it does, but it's a
Yeah, and
word.
so like this is a file where we need to pull in different objects. And so we're importing them from different files. So we're importing the certification from the certification file, and then we're using them down here in this code. And so we have a bunch of different code that we compile together, and this is a very simple file, but this is one where it's kind of just importing things and putting stuff together. And then each of these blocks of code have different elements inside of it.
Oh.
Yeah, and so it's still very English. It's just knowing how to rearrange things and use them.
That's cool. So
Yeah.
what is this? What am I looking at? What would this like
So
equate to?
that what that is, this is something that it's a project that I'm doing at work, and what it is,
Oh, okay.
we're making a learning website, and I'm the tech lead on it. And
Yeah.
so in this website, we want it to be the kind of thing where when you are wanting to learn, let's just say, a new programming language or a new concept of web development or something, you can go in and log in, watch different videos, and then when you're done with the video, move on to the next one, and it tracks your progress. You add different quizzes in between the videos,
Cool.
making sure you learn. And so each of those different import statements that you saw there are importing parts of that website. And so there was like a video. That video is going to be the actual video. The question and the answer, those are the questions and answers for the quizzes. And so that was kind of building out a database for us to build the rest of the website.
Oh, that's so cool. So, oh, that's so cool. Is it like, do you just like write them from scratch?
A
So like
lot of
it's just
times
like a
people,
blank sheet when you first
yeah,
go
and
in.
so like if you wanted me to, I could build a website for you like from scratch here.
Whoa, like just blank screen and then you just like write your language and it just builds it.
Right. Yeah,
Oh,
and
that's so cool.
there is a thing in web development called package managers. There's a thing called NPM, which is called the Node Package Manager, and what it is, it's basically to avoid people having to reinvent the wheel. It lets you import different people's codes that they release to the public to be able
And
to
then
use.
put them together to
Right, like
create.
Legos, really. And
Right,
so
yeah.
like if you are really good at making these blue Lego blocks and I have just a blank screen in front of me, I could be just like, okay, well, I need blue, and I can import the
Right.
blocks that you've made public, so that way I don't have to reinvent the wheel for some of that.
Right. Oh, that's so interesting. But you can do both, right?
Oh yeah, you can do both. So if I really wanted to make the blue blocks from the ground up, I could if I had to. But if I didn't want to deal with that, there's a whole world called open source where it's just people putting their source code out in the open, hence the name open source. And yeah, you can pull all of the different open source code and make a really fully fledged, big featured website a lot of times without actually having to write any code.
Is open source like just kind of like a passion platform where people just kind of like distribute their codes for free?
Yeah, it's people wanting to give back, and it's
awesome.
it's an interesting world because people are trying to figure out how to monetize it and make businesses out of it. And a lot of people are indie developers that just want to give things away for free. And so, for example, Microsoft has really been investing a ton in open source, and they actually bought GitHub, which is like the biggest open source platform out there, and a bunch of other things. And they open sourced VS Code, like their big code editor, and they open sourced a bunch of aspects of Windows and stuff. And a lot of people are like, what are you doing, Microsoft? You owned all this code and now it's just free for anyone. But because it's free for anyone, that means anyone can help improve it too. And so if I find a bug in the software, I can be just like, oh, well, there's this bug. I know how to fix it. I can make a change and submit it. And it ends up almost being like how Wikipedia can be edited by anyone. And it's become, that's how open source code often ends up becoming, because it's a bunch of people looking at code from all over the world in different backgrounds and stuff and making better software.
That's awesome. So it's kind of like give and take, where they distribute software for people to use for free, but also in return, people can kind of, you know, they got the world at hand to kind of like improve it for them.
Right.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome. Do you contribute on GitHub?
Yeah, I do a lot. A lot of my projects are at least the ones that I've been lately doing have been starter projects, so that way people can build a website if they wanted to. And so if you were to go to my GitHub right now, for example, I have this one starter blog website where if you click a button, it'll deploy to Netlify. Netlify is actually where I work.
Yep.
And Netlify is a place where you can host websites. And so you click the button, it deploys to Netlify, and suddenly you have a website, and then you can customize it to your heart's content by touching the code or just editing different parts of it. And so I have various starter projects of varying complexity, where some is just a basic one-page homepage starter website, and then others are a fully featured blog where you can add your own posts and everything, and it'll update live and stuff for you.
Cool. Yeah, I actually did want to ask about Netlify. You do, I know that you do work there.
Yeah.
What? Because I checked out their website, and to be frank, I couldn't figure out what the service actually was. Maybe it's just my brain just like, oh, I think I was just tired or something. But could you explain what Netlify actually?
Yeah, I can speak to it. So the very, very short answer is you can host a website there.
Right.
But the longer answer of it is that Netlify allows you to host pretty complex websites really, really easily. Because a lot of the times, if you want to host a really complex website that pulls in data from something and runs a lot of functions and lets you log in and log out and have all kinds of functionality like that, you need to have a really big, robust database and a really heavy account that where you have multiple people configuring things and stuff. But with Netlify, I mentioned you can click a button and it's deployed. That's how easy it is. And so the point of Netlify was to make it easier to deploy websites online. And then it also has different features where, for example, when you want to add a contact form to your website, typically you would have to have some kind of server that is sitting somewhere that can accept form responses and then process that data and send it somewhere. But if you use Netlify forms, then it handles all of that for you. All you have to do is say this form is a Netlify form in your code. It's literally adding one word for Netlify. And it automatically pulls in all of your form responses and makes a spreadsheet for you. And there's a lot of other things. You can make login and log out functionality with just a snippet of code from Netlify rather than writing your whole service based on that. And so it makes it easier to host websites.
Right. So it's kind of basically like that blue Lego thing where it's like you don't need to know like an extensive coding language to be able to host and build a website, basically.
Right. Yeah. And so that's the angle of it where it's really easy, but because it has so many powerful elements, businesses are able to be hosted on it too. Like Nike hosts some websites on Netlify, and like really big brands host websites on it, because then they don't have to deal with having whole teams of people just maintaining servers and things. They can just host it on Netlify and have a couple people make sure everything is cleaned up, and managed.
Is it like, so is it any, maybe it could be like a completely different universe, but you know I'm familiar with like Wix and like Squarespace and places like that.
Right.
Is that like, so is it kind of like almost like a competitor, or is it like
It's different because Wix and Squarespace are website builders where like you'll say, oh, I want this theme and I want to populate the content, and you pretty much never touch code. That's how Wix and Squarespace works. With Netlify, you do write the code, but you can use a template and drag it in and customize it and everything, but you have more fine-grained control with it.
Mm. Right. So it's like, yeah, I've actually personally used Wix before. It's like, there's a lot of limitations to it as well. Like you can use only certain color templates or like different shapes. You can't like really, go outside the box, so to speak.
Yeah, and so if you want to be much more flexible and much more powerful, that's when you would use something like Netlify or Netlify itself to do something bigger than that.
Yeah. Are you are you working right now? Are you, because it's like during the week, is it like do you go to work every day?
Yeah, I mean, so Netlify is actually fully a remote company, so I work from home. This is my desk in front of me. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
And so they have an office in San Francisco, but a grand majority of the company is fully remote.
That's so cool.
And yeah, it's really nice. I've actually worked remote both at Netlify and at other places for about 2 years now. And I love working remotely. It's great because I can work from anywhere. If I decide to go visit my parents somewhere or go travel, I can.
And you can still work from
as long as I have Wi-Fi. Yeah.
That's so cool. Is it like, so what consists of your daily kind of work life then?
Yeah, and so it depends on the day, but for example, a day like today, I had meetings in the morning, and those kinds of meetings are things like planning conferences and writing up blog posts and having office hours and stuff. I'm looking over here because that's where my calendar is. And then I'm working on a couple projects right now that involve needing to write code. And so, for example, I'm writing up a tutorial right now for how to build something to deploy onto Netlify. And so I'm writing the app for that right now so that I can write a tutorial on how to build the app and get that shipped.
Whoa. So you're making the platform to write, on which you will write the tutorial on.
It's very meta. Yeah.
Wow. So you're like making the universe basically.
And that's what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah.
You gotta contain the ego.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. Like, because like it's literally like a blank sheet, like you're just sitting there and it's just a blank sheet. You got nothing, and you
it's like drawing almost, but with code.
Do you ever like this? This is a little bit of a stupid question, but like, if you see like Matrix and stuff like that, do you ever like watch it and then like, oh, I know what he's doing, or is it like just gibberish most of the time?
It's very fun to watch code on movies and stuff, because sometimes it's really, you're just like, oh dang, they knew what they were doing when they wrote this. Like they had an actual coder talk to them, and sometimes you're just like, they are
no
just
sense
making stuff up. Like for example, in Jurassic Park, that is a lovely joke for all software people, where they're just like, oh, a Unix machine, I know this, and it's all these like 3D squares and stuff. We're just like, that is not what a Unix machine looks like. Yeah, and so there are definitely many shows where you're just like, they didn't know what they were looking at. But shows like Mr. Robot, even Silicon Valley, they did a pretty good job of making
it legit,
decent code. Yeah.
Oh, I actually haven't watched Robo Man.
Mr. Robot.
Yeah, Mr. Robot. It looks good. It looks good. That was on Netflix though, wasn't it?
I think so. It was on TV first before going to Netflix.
Oh right. I don't. Well, I don't have Netflix because I know that I would 100% get addicted and never get any work done if I do get it.
Yes.
And I have no self-control. But that's awesome. That's awesome. Just kind of, I feel I could kind of relate to it as well, because although like I'm in more so like the artistic side of things, where it's like writing music based on my life experiences, but it's still like, I think the logistics are the same, where I'm just kind of sitting there with a blank sheet of composition on Ableton, which is like the software that I use for producing music. And it's just like, I punch some keyboards and it's just like I create stuff from scratch. And I think that's the fun part of it, just kind of creating a little mini world of my own.
Yeah. Do you write the music notes first or the lyrics first?
Ooh, I think it really depends. It depends on like the mood that I'm in, because each kind of approach really kind of I need to be in like a different mindset. So like with lyrics, it's very like emotion kind of packed. So if I'm like in a situation where I'm feeling a certain emotion or like going through an experience that's quite intense, that's when I would just kind of sit down without even like a keyboard or anything or like a piano. I would just sit down with a notepad and I would just like just kind of hum out notes and like some words and just jot down. It's kind of like writing a diary, basically, writing lyrics first. But like accompanied by kind of melodic ideas, but mostly just kind of vomiting it into like a poem of some sort. Um, Whereas if I'm kind of like starting a song from like the melody part, like the notes of it, like the
Mhm.
instrumentals first, it would just it would just be like a really fun thing where I would just, oh, I kind of today I feel like listening to some synths, so I will just sketch out some synths and there you go. And it's just like it's not really like experience packed. But then later on I will finish the instrumentals and then kind of go back to it and do the same thing but with the instrumentals with the lyrics. Um and it's really not as like clean cut as I just put it. It's usually just kind of mix of both and
Mhm.
uh I've tried to like put a schedule to it and like put uh like a working schedule for it where it's like, oh, okay, today I will write lyrics, I will finish this song. It just never really worked out. I just got to be in the right mood to do it. Um,
Yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes I
yeah,
feel that way about code too, where I'm just like, I can't code today. My brain's
really,
not
because I
having
thought it
it.
was like, oh, it's an artist thing. It's like, oh, it's a musician thing, but it must be
It's
like,
it's
must
a
be the
thing.
same.
Well, if you're not in the right mindset, then it's just like it's forced, and then you don't do
Yeah.
your best work when it's forced.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of like a universal thing where if you're not in the right mindset to do it, you might as well just take a break because if you can't afford it, like if you're,
Right.
if you have the luxury to be able to take a break, then by all means I think we have to just do it because, you know, so many times I've just kind of plowed through and just crashed.
Yeah.
And just I had to do it from scratch over again because I just wasn't happy with it, you know.
Yeah.
Did you ever
Yeah.
have to like force out a code and then you didn't like it, so you had to start from scratch?
Yeah, there have been many times where I'm just like, this isn't going well, and I just delete the folder, and I'm like, I'm gonna try this another day. There's there's a kind of an ongoing joke where so there's this thing called Git where it's version control, where every single time you make a change to code, you can save it at that point in time,
Yeah.
and so like a checkpoint as you keep going. And there have been times where I'll go deep in there and I'm just like, this isn't even worth a checkpoint or a commit or anything. I'm just going to start over. And so you just delete all of the work that you did and start from the complete ground up. That has happened many times. And that's a very ongoing joke of people being like, I just deleted it
Not
and
worth it.
started it completely from scratch. Yeah,
Not worth it.
not worth it
Do you ever
sometimes.
did you ever but like theoretically you could just save it, make the checkpoint and then just start from scratch. Did you ever
Yeah.
like did you ever regret not saving it?
Uh, Very few times. There are
Right,
definitely ways
right.
where you can save it and then experiment with something. You're just like, this experiment went bad. I'm going back to my save point
Mm.
and just uh, leave it be. But that I think that used to happen to be more, and now I guess I'm kind of more methodical about how I do that because I'm just like, if I waste time on this, then I will never get this other part done, and kind of just balancing time more and stuff.
Yeah. Gut feeling is a scary thing because it's actually true most of the time. Like I've had times
Yeah.
where I will work on a mix for like hours on end, like all night long. And I'm like, the more I get into it, the more I'm like, this is not going well, but I'm gonna keep going because I never know. I never know. But my gut's telling me like it's not going well. You know
Yep.
you're gonna have to delete this. This is not worth it. But I would just
Yeah.
keep plowing through, but in the end I just end up deleting it.
Yeah, there's a time sink fallacy where like I've spent so much time on this already. I
Yeah,
just
it's
gotta
like I
keep
gotta make the
going.
most of it.
Yeah, and then there are times where I'm just like, this project was a waste of time, but oh
Lesson learned.
well, and delete it.
Yeah,
Yeah, move
yeah,
on.
yeah. I think it's yeah. I think I get uh I think it's just kind of trying to enjoy every moment of it, I guess. I think that's the only
Hmm.
way to be sane throughout this whole process of like making work and deleting it and starting over again. Cuz I think it's inevitable, you know? I think it's just
Yeah,
kind of like a trial and error thing where you just try things and cuz without experiments there wouldn't be any, groundbreaking work, right?
yeah. There are times where my experiments have turned into some of my best projects, and then
Yeah.
where I'm just like, this is going to be an amazing project, and it ends up being a dud. So
Yeah.
it's very
Because,
real.
like, if you thought too much beforehand, it's like, oh, this is just an experiment. It's not going to turn out very good. Then, it's a it's a risk never taken, and it's you never know what could have come out of it.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I could have. Like one song that kind of took off for me could almost never existed because it was just like it was an experiment, and I never really intended it to be an actual song. But that's really what gave me my first break. And that was like a valuable lesson for me. Just kind of try to have fun, experiment, never be too precious with your time. Just do what's fun for you and put it out there because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. One of my favorite songs of yours is the I'm Tired one.
uh
I I love that one because it just speaks to me because there are times where I'm just like I am tired of just
yeah,
my code of things and stuff. But it's a good one. That one
thank
I've
you.
shared to lots and lots of people. I love that one.
Yeah, I wrote that song when literally at like 3 a.m. in the morning, and I hadn't slept for like the 48 hours prior
Oh
to
no.
writing it, and I was just like just literally blush. Literally every single word in that song was true, like just at that moment. I wrote that in like 10 minutes and just vomited out. It was one of those things where I wrote out the lyrics first,
Mm,
and then like, oh, I'll just forget about it for a few weeks, and then I did it, and I made it and I put it out there.
yeah. Well, and you can tell that you wrote it late, and it's great that way. Like I think those short songs end up being some of the greatest ones. I've known a few songwriters and watched a few interviews and stuff, and it's fascinating because a lot of times they're just like, yeah, it's almost annoying that the one that I spent months on isn't as
Yeah.
popular as the one I spent an hour on, and that's just how it
Yeah,
happens.
yeah. I mean, yeah, that's so true. Like, I'll Just Dance. I don't know if you've listened to that one,
I
but
love that
that
one.
one,
That one's great.
thank you. That one I finished in a day. That's like, and I'm not even talking about writing the song, just like writing the song, making the song, finishing the song, all within a day.
Wow.
And yeah, it's just one day, and
But
that's
it's a
like,
great one.
yeah, it's like that's what took off, and it's kind of, I wouldn't say I'm frustrated by it or anything, but it's like it makes me realize that there's no right or wrong, like it doesn't just
Yeah.
because you spend. I think this is something that I'm starting to learn. Just because you spend loads of time doesn't mean it's gonna be good, and
Yeah.
what's gonna give you like what's gonna make it successful. I think it's all about kind of just making finishing at the right time that feels at the right time. uh
Yeah.
and I think that's difficult. I think it's more difficult um than in theory, because it's like, oh, I could do more, and it's gonna get better. But you never know. It's you can just finish it off in real life.
Right. Yeah. Some of my most popular content and most useful content for people has been stuff that I put almost no effort into, and I'm just like, is it worth
Just
doing
like,
all of these really?
yeah.
But then you'll get a gem on occasion. You're just like, okay, well, I guess it's worth it sometimes.
Yeah. I
No.
think it's just, I guess in the end, it's just all about doing what's fun for us, no matter how
Mhm.
long it takes or how short it takes. It's just about, if you're having fun spending months on end making this thing, by all means do. But if it's turning into a drag, then, might as well move on. to the next
Yeah.
project.
There's this one quote I heard once, and I don't remember who said it, but it was time enjoyed wasting is not time wasted. And so if you're having a good time, even if you're doing something stupid, then it's not wasted time. It's a good time. And I think that applies towards work in kind of an opposite way as well, where it's like if you aren't enjoying your work, then it's kind of a waste of time because
Yeah.
you won't be producing good work.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I decided quite early on that I'm probably not going to do like a standard 9 to 5. And this is only just a personal thing because I know some people thrive in workplaces and workforces, but it's just, having tried a couple of internships and stuff, I just realized personally it's not really my thing and I don't enjoy being in that kind of environment. Um I love being in an environment where I am in full control of my work and I can just be creative in however ways I want. Um, that was like the biggest decision. This is biggest kind of like standard that I make decisions on. Is it going to be fun for me or is it not?
Yeah.
So
That's awesome though. And there's this book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers.
oh yeah, it's a good one. It's a good
Yeah,
one.
I haven't actually finished it yet, but he makes a really good point in there saying that a lot of times when people are good at things and producing really good work, it's just because they've practiced for a really long time. Like even some of the child prodigies, like even Mozart and stuff, they started really early. So by the time they were 16 or whatever, they had 10,000 hours of practice under
The
their
sheer
belts.
amount of hours they put into it. Yeah.
Right. And so if you enjoy something, you will put more time into it and thus you will be better at it. And so you might as well do what you want to do because that's the thing you're going to be good at.
The earlier you start doing it, the better.
Yeah.
And also, it doesn't just because you're doing something that you are passionate and you generally enjoy doing doesn't mean every step of the way is going to be fun and all
Absolutely.
jolly and happy and oh, I'm having so much fun, because it's like there are some serious drags when you do that. But I
Yes.
think it's just kind of like all about being so driven and passionate about the end goal that you don't care about the hustle and you don't mind the hustle even, because it's like the reward that that you're going to get after it is going to outweigh any kind of struggles that you have along
Right.
the
You
way.
just have to remember that and try
You
not to be
do have to
bogged
remember it.
down.
It's something that you really have to be conscious about, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a joke that happens a lot with tech stuff where like sometimes in some coding things it doesn't happen as often anymore. If you forget a semicolon in the wrong place, it'll break your entire program and you won't
Oh
know why.
shit.
It'll just be broken.
Yeah.
And luckily there's better software for coding out there now that will catch it and tell you what's wrong. But there have been times where I'll misspell something, mix one error up, one small thing, and I just like bring in a coworker. I'm just like, do you see what's wrong with this? And they say, you spelled that wrong, after I've spent like 3 hours trying to debug my code. And in those moments, you're just like, why do I have this as a career? This is terrible.
So
I'm
annoying.
upset. But then when something works, you're just like,
Yeah, this is it. This is what
I
I've
have
been.
done it.
Yeah.
I have made it. Yeah, exactly. It's the best feeling. And so
It's the
you got
best
to have the
feeling.
highs and lows for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. You gotta have the lows to enjoy the highs as much as possible.
Yeah,
Because the highs
absolutely.
wouldn't be highs if it weren't for the lows. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, so wise.
Yes. So
Yeah.
deep. So deep. And also, I think you touched upon a point that I also want to kind of talk about, where you kind of asked your coworkers if they can find something that's wrong with your coding. Like, I think this is something I'm only just beginning to learn and starting to get a grasp on, but asking help for other people, and knowing when to bring somebody else's perspective on things, I think is something that I personally have uh not struggled with, but something that's a very new concept for me. And um I it's something that I would also love to like get used to, bringing other collaborators and bringing other people's perspective into things. Do you ever get
Yeah.
like do you ever feel like, oh, this is my code, it's like I can figure this out on my own, and I don't need other people's help.
All the time. And so that is something that I actually do struggle with and that I'm working to get better at, because it's, especially with something like code, like there are certain problems and things that you might run into where you can't figure out how to Google the answer, you're struggling with, and you might get stuck on a problem for days. You might get stuck on a problem for a really
On your
long
own,
time.
yeah.
And
It's a dark
especially
place. It's a dark place to
it's
be
a
in.
dark place and you're just like, I'm an idiot. But what I found is the most senior engineers I know are the ones who ask questions right away. And that's something that I keep having to tell myself, because especially when you're new, you're just like, okay, well, I'm supposed to know this much information. I want to prove myself to my team, yada, yada, yada. But then you end up getting stuck on something for days. But if you just ask a question, like after a half hour of being stuck, all of a sudden you will be unstuck and able to move forward right away
Yeah,
without
and
having
save
to
a
think
lot
about
of
it.
headaches and time as
Yeah,
well.
and so you almost have to kind of learn to throw your ego out the door and be just like, you know what, I don't know how to do this. I'm being vulnerable right now, but it's a game changer to be able to get that kind of help suddenly and be able to be just like, yeah, I don't know, but I can find out. And then slowly you start to know more, and then you know the right questions to ask and how to ask better questions and who to ask those questions and stuff. And I feel like a good significant majority percentage of coding is knowing how to get answers, and whether it's asking questions, Googling something, going through documentation, finding out solutions to stuff.
That's so interesting, because for me, like, ego's not really much of a problem. Like, because I have no ego whatsoever. I'm like, I don't care if I sound stupid. I don't like, because I don't know. I know that I don't know a lot of stuff, and I'm okay with it. I'm okay with that part of things generally. But I think for me is more of and because it's like more tilted towards an art form than coding, music making. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's more like it kind of feels like a matter of privacy almost, because it's like I'm writing about something that's really, really personal for me. So to bring somebody else into this really private, personal picture, it feels almost like I'm being, it's almost kind of like intrusive, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I actually spoke with Damien, actually, who's a music producer, the other day, and he said something really interesting, how, collaborations can actually just be a standalone collaboration, and you don't necessarily have to treat it the same way as you treat your personal projects. It's kind of like an entity on its own, and
Mm-hmm.
something that you can just kind of enjoy in its own right. Um, so yeah, it's kind of like I don't really mind asking. Yeah, I don't really mind asking questions, but I think it's, for me, sometimes I just need to, yeah, just need to kind of know when to ask for help.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
figuring out when,
Yeah,
and
figuring out when.
learning to be vulnerable with people, I think, is a whole other aspect of that too.
Yeah.
Because it's admitting you don't know something, or showing off something that you're working on, and be just like, be nice, but this is what I'm working on.
But
And
I kind of want to flex as well, It's like, oh, I'm
yeah,
kind of proud of it, but I'm not sure if I can, like, be upfront about it.
which
I'm
is
kind
like, this is perfect, love it.
I think it's perfect, but I can't actually say it's perfect. But, here you go. This is what I've been working on. I think it's pretty good, pretty decent. But
Mm.
yeah. Do you do you have a senior then that you kind of, like, you consider as like a boss, or is it kind of like more very like independent, kind of standalone thing?
Yeah, so my current team, we have a manager, and she's awesome, and she kind of leads our crew, but the
Mm.
rest of us were kind of on very even footing. And we specialize in different things. We all know, for example, the language JavaScript, but we use it in different ways. And so as a result, it's kind of a very low ego team, which is really nice. And so we'll have a manager where she'll say like, oh, well, the company wants this, this, and this. But otherwise, what's nice about my current job is we kind of get to do what we want mostly. Like as long as it aligns with the goals of the company, and there are times where like someone on the business side will say, hey, at some point could we do something with regards to this? Then our team will say, oh yeah, we could do this, this, and this. And so luckily our team is nice and freeform, so we can set our own goals and the projects that we work on enough where we're still working like a 9-to-5 type of job, but it doesn't always feel like it because we have the freedom to work on what we want. So technically, yes, I have a senior, but it's more she's a teammate of ours that has a different kind of role rather than like the do what I
the
want
boss
you to code.
where it's like, oh, I report to her every single week, or it's like, yeah, so
Right.
it's kind of like pretty much free formed.
Yeah,
That's
like
so cool.
we have a team meeting every week, but it's mostly us saying like, well, I'm working on a blog this week, I'm streaming this week, I'm speaking at a conference this week, I'm coding on this week, that kind of stuff.
That's awesome. I really truly think that's the way that a lot of corporations should work. Not necessarily remotely, but like even if you're working at the place, I think it really should be the way to do it because I'm no business person. I've never really obviously owned a company or ran a company, but I really think it's the way to bring out the best in people.
Absolutely.
Just
Well, and
having
we have nice flexible schedules too, where sometimes people will be like, okay, I'm gone in the middle of the day, but I'll be working at night and stuff. And being able to have the flexibility of time, the flexibility of what we work on, the flexibility of all kinds of different things, it's so nice because we're still helping the company, but we're also bringing better work because we're happier to do it, because it's something that interests us more than just being told, hey, you need to write this, this, and this, do it, go. Yeah, I agree. I think more companies should be run that way.
Actually, this may not be like very directly related to what we're just talking about, but do you ever feel like gender kind of comes into play when it comes to your occupation and your job? Because women in tech is a rarity almost, isn't it? In pretty much any profession really nowadays, but especially in like tech areas, it's a very kind of, it's not as prominent as males working in that profession, isn't it?
Yeah, that is the everlasting topic that has always been the case. I've been the only woman engineer at the company and at the team multiple times before. Luckily at Netlify, it's been really cool because I have my first woman manager ever, and my team has women on it, and the company is actually like 44% women, which is women
awesome,
and non-binary people, which you never see that in tech. Typically the percentage is less than 25%. It's less than a quarter. And you kind of get used to it. It's something that happens. Unfortunately, I have had some not great experiences as a result of that. But I'm hopeful because I think people are more woke, for lack of a better phrase, more now. And I do think it's slowly getting better. It's still there. It's still very much a thing. And unfortunately, I know a few too many people who have had really bad experiences because of their gender, but it's getting better. It's a very real thing that we have to do.
Yeah. I I once did like a project where it was like the project was all about, it was like a design project that I did, and the brief was about breaking the stigma around like women's periods. And during like the research phase, I learned really like so many insightful pieces of information. One of which that really stood out for me was that I think it was like PMS, so like premenstrual menstrual syndrome, which is like for people who doesn't know, it's basically um like a symptom that women have prior to having their periods, where they're having hormonal imbalances. So they have, it's a real thing. It's like a real thing, contrary to what a lot of people think. It's like, oh, you know,
Very, very
it's a
real.
very real thing where due to like the hormonal imbalance, you have like mood swings and you have fatigue, and in severe cases you can't even move for days on end.
Hmm.
um and the piece of information I found was that I think out of like 45% of the women who have PMS, um 95% of that 45% of the PMS people have trouble speaking out to their bosses about their symptoms. So they just
Mm.
end up like suffering in silence. And it's really intrusive. It's really intrusive when you try to work. Um and that just kind of like made me realize, like, we have to be more verbal about the stuff that we go through as women's in workplaces, whether that may be in tech or music or just kind of, in any occupation, you just got to be verbal about things. And I really do think that's the way to, take a step further into breaking all sorts of stigma around women in workplaces.
Yeah, well, and I think it comes back to the flexible workspace or
Mm,
workplace type of
yeah.
concept too. Like, because I work from home, I've luckily not have had to have that conversation
Yeah.
much. Like
Yeah.
like there are times where the cramps are so bad that I can't stand, but luckily I work from home, so I can lay in bed on my laptop and
That's
deal with it
sweet.
if I
Yeah.
have to. And so I think more accepting and flexible workspaces are the future of work, because when
Mm.
workers are more comfortable with their work and they're more comfortable with talking to their bosses about things, and they're able to bring their whole selves to work, that results in better products and better work ethic and more
Yeah.
loyal employees too.
The gender imbalance in tech, has it always been the case like since uni for you basically? Because I'm assuming that you
Yeah,
studied coding at uni,
I
right?
did. Yeah, I
Yeah.
studied computer science. Yeah, my first comp sci class, I was the only girl in there,
Right.
and yeah, multiple times throughout college that was the case. That's was just how it was. I think of all of the people who graduated with computer science my year, there were 4 girls who graduated, and
Whoa.
there were a lot. And so, yeah, that it's a very, very common thing. And
It's
unfortunately,
yeah.
because we're not common, it leads to fairly negative things that happen. And sometimes it's minor, where, for example, I'll be at a technical event. We have hackathons a lot where they're just like coding competitions, and I liked to
Oh, that's so
help out
cool.
at those a lot.
Yeah.
And I would go up to someone and say, "Hey, I noticed you're in the helpline. Do you need help with something?" And it's like, "Yeah, but I want to talk to an engineer." And I'm like, "Oh,
Oh.
well, I am one." And they're like, "Well, it's a pretty hard problem." And I'd be just like,
Oh.
"Try me," and then I'd solve it. But like that kind of stuff happens a lot, and
That's oh.
that's a very minor instance of some of the things that I've experienced, and other women have experienced.
That's so fricked up. I don't it's so I don't I'm getting angry. I just I it's I mean it's not just I think the reverse goes the same though. My sister studies nursing and she says like 95% of the people that she is studying with are females and like the rest
Mhm.
of it is males and they're like the small minority. Um and I that always made me wonder like is there like a primal interest difference or something like what's it's so bizarre that in some occupations there's like this very distorted gender imbalance and
It's funky too, because a lot of it is contrary to history and aligned with history. Like, there are some things where you're just
mm,
like, "Oh, well, I guess that happened in history, so that's how it was." But what's weird about computing is it was started by women. Like,
right
the first computers, the first programming languages, the first algorithms, almost all were done by women, or written by women and stuff. And until like the 80s or so, it was a women dominated field. And then
right
suddenly it
okay
wasn't. And so it's weird to see that kind of ebb and flow in different things, where
interesting
sometimes, like, for example, with nursing, I feel like that has a lot of historical alignment, where like women were taking care of the men going off to war and
right
stuff like that. um, but with something like computing, and with something like, I don't know, law, Well, I guess law is kind of legally that way. Anyway, there's a lot of fields where it's a mystery why it happened, or at least it feels like it's a mystery sometimes.
I mean, I think the only theory that I could think of is because, like, business wise, like entrepreneurship is a very male dominated area, and it always kind of has been. So,
Mm.
because tech a lot of times goes hand in hand with entrepreneurship, it's kind of that transition from like a female driven industry to like a very male dominated uh kind of area. I don't know, it's just like
I
just my
think
thought.
I think video games have something to do with it too,
Oh right,
because
yeah.
like video games opened the door of if you want to make your own video games, you have to learn how to code. But
Mm,
video games were primarily marketed to boys,
mm.
and still kind of are in a lot of ways. And so I have a feeling that contributed a lot, especially in the early 90s and early 2000s as
It's
well,
a
because
massive
that's
industry as well, the game
yeah, and
industry.
that's how a lot of people learned, oh wait, coding can be a thing because they
Yeah,
play video games.
interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you play games?
I do. I'll probably be playing Fortnite right after this.
Am I missing out? Because I suck at games in all games. I suck at games. But like Fortnite looks fun. Like I've seen like artists do virtual concerts there. It's just amazing.
Yeah,
Like how with
it's
all the effects and
I
everything.
Fortnite is very fun, but I would say it's not as fun unless you're playing with friends. Like I used to kind of just play solo and I kind of lost interest, but now that I play with a regular group of friends, we have a good time because it's more just like us hanging out while
Mm.
playing Fortnite. Games that I really enjoy just playing solo, I really like Stardew Valley. Have you ever played that one?
No, what's it about?
That one, it's like a
Sounds interesting.
combination of Sailor Moon and Pokemon and Minecraft. So you have like a farm and you're taking care of your farm, but you're also or not Sailor Moon, Harvest Moon. Anyway,
Oh, okay.
you're taking. Sorry, I had it mixed up. You're taking care of your farm, but you're also getting to know people in a village, and you're also mining and discovering monsters and magic, and you're kind of just trying to build up this world of yourself. It's very open worldsy type of game, and it's so fun.
Is it
I
3D or like?
No, it's like a top-down 2D.
Oh, right. So like, is it one of those like pixelated things?
Yeah, like a
Oh,
pixel art
cool.
game. It's
Cool,
it's
cool, cool.
so fun. I love that one. And then there's another game you might appreciate the art of it called Grease, Gris.
Mm-hmm.
That game, it was designed by a watercolor artist. And the game is beautiful. Typically when I play a video game, because I have the code mindset, I'm just like, "Oh, that's probably how they built that. That's probably how they built that." Like that's kind of how I think while I play games.
Yeah.
Grease was so artfully beautifully done. I have no idea how they did some of it. Like
Whoa. I'm
it
gonna check it out.
blew my mind. That one was a gorgeous game to play with. I like the more story games on occasion, but then if I'm just playing for fun with friends, Fortnite's fun. Fall Guys is fun if you've heard of that one. That one
Fall
came out
Guys.
pretty recently, like last week or 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
It's based on Japanese game shows, and so
Sounds
there
hilarious then.
it's hilarious.
Japanese Japanese
It's
game shows are so random and weird. I love it.
That's what this game is. Basically, you're like a jelly bean character, and there you're in a room with 60 people, and you're all playing the game. And sometimes it's like figure out which door is real, and you smack your body into different doors.
Oh, that's
Or
so random.
sometimes
I
it's a
love it.
race. Sometimes it's like a memory game. There's all these different games, and people get eliminated, and you want to be like the ending person who can get the crown. And so it goes from 60 to one. Every single game, and that one's really fun too.
Are
I
those
haven't
60
won
people
yet,
like
but
real people
yeah,
or oh
yeah,
right,
you're
okay. So
playing
it's like a
against real
community
people.
based. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I see. Remember
that one is very frustrating, but very fun.
remember like I love these kind of like really random games.
Yeah.
Remember I don't know what the game was called, but it was like a Mario series where on Nintendo like
Mario Party, maybe?
no, it was I could have been Party, but it was like just like mini games where it's like just like the most random games where it's like, oh, you have to unscroll the toilet roll as fast as possible, or it's like, oh, you have to like pop the bubbles as fast as possible. It's just like really random sets of
Yeah.
games. but I love them. They're
Yeah,
like
I love that arcade style.
just time killing games that are just fun to just do.
Yeah, those are my favorite games to play on my phone to just like do
Mm,
something
just do
dumb,
it.
play.
Just keep your fingers moving.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
story games as well, though.
Mhm.
I don't play games, but I do love watching gameplay videos. Um, and there was one game that I just left such a strong impression because it was beautiful. Also, the story was amazing. And it's
Which one?
called Detroit Become Human. Um,
Hmm,
it's
have to look that
it's
one up.
good. The story, it's basically like it's one of those things where it's like a choice based games. So
Oh, I
so
love
it's
those
like,
ones.
yeah, so like the endings all like they have like 50 endings depending on like the choices that you make.
Cool.
And oh my gosh, it's a good one. It's a good one. It's
Ooh,
got
that's a
like
highly rated game. Ooh, I'm
it's a
excited.
good one. It's a good one because it's like it's kind of like touches upon like the AI like moral side of things, which is like one of the big kind of topics that's going around nowadays. Um but the story is gorgeous. The graphics are amazing. It's like super realistic, kind of one of those things, like
Mhm.
motion capture things. But I loved watching the gameplay videos, and I think I must have watched like 10 hours worth of that
Oh my
gameplay
gosh,
because
that's
I
amazing.
wanted to watch all the endings.
Have you seen Last of Us?
That is that like the zombie game? Because
Yeah, yeah, there's zombies in it.
I
That one
think
is intense, but the story's incredible.
I think there's a new one that's been going around. I
Yeah,
haven't watched that yet, but I have watched like the previous versions. Oh, I
yeah.
gotta watch.
The new one I'm kind of afraid to start playing. It's very scary, and especially in this pandemic, I've been just like, maybe I'll wait till everything's settled again, and
Yeah.
then I'll get back into the scary games. But oh, Last of Us, the first one, I loved that story a ton. And then one that I started recently that I haven't finished yet is Horizon Zero Dawn. If you've
I
heard of that
haven't
one.
heard of that yet.
That
I haven't
one
heard.
apparently was like the highest rated game when it came out, like ever, and it just came out on PC like this month or in the past couple months. But people are freaking out, and I'm excited to play it because so far it's been really good.
How do you get those games? Do you like order them online, or it's like, is it like, I don't know.
It kind of depends. Like if I'm playing it on PlayStation, I'll just get it on PlayStation, and then if I'm on my computer, I'll use Steam. And
Oh,
typically play on Steam.
okay. I kind of, yeah, I want to play games now.
Ooh,
Ooh, I might
yeah.
quit
You want
music to do
to
games.
play Fortnite?
That's cool. Um, I think we can. I before we wrap this up, I want to ask you like one last question because I
Of
thought this
course.
was so beautiful. I checked out your. I think it was called Code Pen. I think.
Oh yeah,
And I saw like your artwork that you did with like CSS. I don't know what exactly CSS is, but I thought they were so adorable and I thought they were so cute. And I was
thanks.
just so curious how you made it. Is it
Yeah,
like,
and so I love CodePen. I actually used to work there for a little bit too. Um, CodePen, for those that don't know, it's a place where you can make art with code, and a lot of people
hmm,
use it to experiment with different pieces of code. And I'll share my screen again so you can look at it
I
one
think
second.
I saw a couple, but one of them was like two like cherries, I think.
Maybe.
They're just two like circle thingy creatures. They were just kind of like, I think they were moving as well. But
It
I
might
just
be the
honest,
rice ball dessert.
I think it was food actually. Yes, that one.
Yeah, this one. So this one was a tough one to
Adorable.
make. When I make something like this, I've done whole talks on how to do this because mine is not even the most beautiful out there. Like there are some gorgeous things out there, but you can make nice, cute little things with code. And this
Oh,
is
I
how
love
it's
that
all
one.
constructed, where it kind of goes into how that is done. But the way it works is you can draw different shapes, and CSS, if I were to describe the internet and like the main languages and stuff that are done to make something online, I've made like the Instagram logo and
Oh,
silly
nice.
stuff like that. um and so no images and all just drawing with code. I'll stop sharing. But to make something like this, on the internet, there's 3 main languages to make a website. There's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And so HTML is kind of like the noun. It's the object of the page. It's like the person, the thing.
Right.
And then JavaScript is kind of like a verb. It's you're telling it to do something.
Right.
It's
Okay. Okay.
a leg or doing something like that. And then CSS is like an adjective. And so it describes the color, the shape, and how it looks.
Okay.
And so HTML being the thing, CSS describing the thing, JavaScript telling the thing to do something.
That's so cool. Okay.
And so with CSS, to draw something like this, I'll create an object with HTML, and sometimes it's just a square or something.
Right.
And then with CSS, I'll say, okay, I want this square, for example, with the Instagram logo, I want it to have rounded edges. I want it to have a drop shadow. I want it to have a gradient in the background. I want it to have these kinds of things. And it's really powerful because you can get really deep into all of the different gradients and all of the different animations and stuff that you can add to it. And some people have made their careers just doing art with this kind of stuff. And it's really, really cool to see.
That's so cool. And then I'm assuming with like, I think it was JavaScript that was verb. You can like make it move as well then. Yeah,
so I could make it where if I click on this link, JavaScript will say, okay, I want you to do a flip, do a dance, and then navigate to Instagram.
That's so cool. That's so cool. So you can like almost now integrate that CSS art to like an actual website.
Yeah, and so like my personal website, if you were to go to like cassidy.co, I actually made it. I made it on CodePen where I was just like, okay, I know I want this font to look like this. I want the colors to randomly change, so I'll use JavaScript to have like a timer to change the colors and everything. And then I'll have JavaScript choose a picture. I'll share my screen again to kind of describe it visually rather than just with my words.
I love your website, by the way.
Thanks.
Like, I mean it. I love one of these websites where it's just like basic and it does its thing, but also it's not ugly. Like I'm not a huge fan of one of those like websites where it's just like, oh, so many fancy photos and it's just like does that slide things and it's just like like, oh, you can tell that you made it on Wix or like Squarespace and you just slapped your photos on the template. I love one of these. Like, I love your website. I really like it.
Thanks. Yeah, I added a little dark mode in there so you can
I hadn't realized. I didn't
know. That one, it's a subtle one. Not everybody notices that one. But yeah, I made it so like there's a JavaScript timer that changes everything. Whenever I mouse over a link, all of the things change color again. There's another timer to do this. I use CSS to say, hey, make the images round instead of square. I'll use HTML to actually add the text and then CSS to make it colorful. And so that's how they all work together. And a beautiful symphony.
So beautiful.
Thank you. Oh, I love coding. It's so great.
It's awesome. I think it's super cool that you're so passionate about it. Like, oh man, I love, like, I would love to get into it, but it's like, but then again, I don't think I can.
You'd be surprised how much you could probably do with just like an hour of learning.
Really?
Like the HTML and CSS stuff, like I've taught elementary schoolers how to do it. Like once you get the basics down, you're just like, oh, okay, that's how this works. It's when JavaScript comes in, that's when it starts to get a little bit more complex. But something like this, you could do something like this in a pretty quick amount of time if you wanted to.
It must be one of those things where it's like just intimidating just to hear what it is. But then actually when you get into it, it's just about finding the right information and just going for it.
Typing it out and being just like, okay, I'm hitting save. It worked. And then going with it.
I think it's really the same with like music production as well. It's like some people get really put off by it. It's like, oh, Ableton, it's like different from GarageBand, but it's like literally the same as GarageBand.
I feel I'm one of those people. I've been called out. I would love to play with it, but I'm kind of just like, oh, I have to learn so much and I have to buy it. I have to figure out how to press all the buttons on the grid.
Honestly, it's so easy. It's so easy. It's like literally just plug in the keyboard, ding dong ding, and record ding dong ding, and there you go. You got a composition right there. And then you plug in your microphone, you sing to it, and there you go. You got a song. It's really as simple as that. And then when you start layering the instruments, it's like, oh, complex music.
Oh, okay. Well, next time we talk, I'll write a song and you write a website. That'll be good.
Fingers crossed. Okay. I just wanted to say thank you so much again. This has been fun. Thank you so much. Thank
Yeah, this
you.
has been great. Thank you for having me, and it's been so great talking to you. It's fun being able to chat with a person who I feel like I listen to your voice all the time in music. So it's great to actually talk to you.
Yeah, and keep in touch. You got my email. We can always, keep
Gab.
keeping in touch. And if I have any questions with CSS or JavaScript or
I got
HTML,
you.
I
Yeah, you're
got
going
it.
to get lots of Ableton questions from me at some point.
Always here to answer questions. Um, Thank you. And
Yeah,
I'm gonna
thanks
stop
again.
recording now. Uh,
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.